Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our interview webinar, right? We really appreciate you guys attending. My name is Jermaine Higgins with Hire GI, and then we're just going to give you some tips that's going to allow you to be more successful in the interview. The ideal of this webinar is just to give you some insights, if you will, of some things that you maybe need to polish up on or be aware of so that you're successful. At Hire GI, we host hiring events on military bases connecting Fortune 500 companies with veteran job seekers like yourself. At some of our events, we have on-site interviews, and some of our events, we have interviews after the event as the employer calls that candidate to speak to them further. And what we found is that some of our service members are not really prepared. They really don't know what to do, even though they may have taken certain classes to get them prepared. So we want to provide some tips, a little bit of insights that we think that may be helpful. So we hope you enjoy, and we hope that this can maybe turn the needle or move the needle, if you will, into a successful job. Okay, so let's get started. You got the call. The employer is like, hey, we would like to interview you. When's a good time? Now what, right? So you schedule it. In this process, little word of advice, you don't have to accept the first date that they offer. At this point, it's really whatever is a good fit for both of you guys. So I would say, you look at your schedule, you let them talk about their schedule, and you find a date that is comfortable for both. Okay. Next thing you got to do that's very important is you need to go back and get the documents that you sent in to apply for that position. Now, in our other webinar about resume writing, you probably heard us talk about targeting your resume. That is probably the biggest aha or secret when it comes to getting a job, right? You will increase your chances of getting the job or the interview by targeting your resume to that job. The way you target your resume is basically looking at the job posting and writing the requirements or explaining your accomplishments of the requirements on the job posting. So that means you need to go back for the interview, look at the job posting, highlight some of the key skill sets that the job posting speaks about, also pull out your resume that you applied with as you're preparing the interview. What this is going to do, this is going to help you two things. One, help you figure out what is the need that the employer is looking for, because the job posting basically says this is the perfect person. So you need to know who is perfect. What do I need to be perfect, right? And then secondly, your resume, going back looking at the resume that you applied with, helps you understand who did you say you were, right? So that you're consistent in this process. Then in preparation, you need to do some research about the company. This is very, very, very important. Keep in mind, it's insulting to a company if you don't know anything about them and you're there interviewing. That shows that you're maybe not as invested in being there. So you say, Jermaine, what do I need to do to research? What does that mean? So you may research the culture, research the growth potential, research, any comments, or, go to Yelp, see how the customers say about it. Go out to Glassdoor, see, what are people saying about the organization? Find out, are you working with something that's ethical? Does it align with your values? Really do some digging and finding out who are they, what are they, and how do you fit in with that, okay? And this will also help you in the interview in understanding how to answer certain questions, because it's going to be aligned with who they are, okay? Look at their mission statement. Look at their values. Look at what do they want to be. Then you need to prepare for the questions. Now, the easy way to prepare for questions, and we're going to go over some in a few minutes, is to go out there and Google interview questions based off your industry. So example, sales questions, top 10 sales questions for salespeople, interview questions for salespeople, top 10 questions marketers get, top 10 questions for HR. And kind of look at those questions and kind of practice those questions, okay? The other thing is, on your job posting that you pulled out, kind of look at the character traits that that's on the job posting. Maybe they're talking about leadership or working with cross-functional teams, or someone is extremely analytical. you might want to go and do some research or find some samples of uh, behavior questions that will allow you to answer those type of skill sets or address those skill sets. So what I mean by that is they may ask you, tell me about a time when you worked in a team and how did you manage that team and what was the results? Well, the ideal of that is you got to tell me what you did, how you did it, and what the results are. So you might want to go out there and prepare to answer those type questions, okay? The other thing you want to do is rehearse, and make sure that you're able to answer those standard questions without stumbling, kind of like what I'm doing on this presentation, right? So think about that piece. Oops. All right, so typical questions. Tell me about yourself. That is probably going to be one of the first questions you're going to get, okay? Now, you ask yourself, why would they want to know? What do they want to know about me? I mean, what do you want to know, right? When I worked in Fortune 500 and even as a career coach now and interviewing people on my staff, that's one of the first questions I ask. And almost 80% of the time, people answer this question wrong, okay? This question is designed to tell the employer, who are you professionally, not who you are personally, okay? So I don't want to know how many kids you got. I don't want to know where you were born. I don't want to know all that. Even though that's all great stuff, the point of this question is tell me about who you are and what leads you to be where we are today, okay? So there's two ways to answer this question. You either give me your 30-second pitch, and if you don't know what your 30-second pitch is, you need to Google that and work on that, okay? The other way to answer this question is to run me through your resume. Tell me, where you started. So, hey, I started my career with the U.S. Navy, worked my way up to where I became a naval chief as I worked in operations and strategic strategies. In that role, I worked with collaborating with others. I led people, motivated them to achieve their best heights. I saw this position, and what really appealed to me is it allowed me to take a lot of things that I learned in the military and transfer that into your organization where we can both have a good fit and succeed and accomplish our goals. All right. Run me through your resume, kind of end with what got you there and why you're there. Okay. Another question they may ask you, why do you want to work here? All right. So that's where your research comes into play. Simple question. Right. This is where you kind of analyze who they are and what do you like about them. You may say things like, I've noticed that, it's a 100% employee invested organization. And that really excites me. I noticed that you have a very great culture when it comes to work-life balance. I came from an environment where work-life balance wasn't a priority, and this is really what I'm looking for in my life. Why I want to work here is because this position will allow me to really allow my skill sets to flourish and really have impact in the civilian sector versus working in the government sector. Whatever that is, you need to think about, explain your talents, your motivation, and why you want to be with that organization. Another question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? FYI, this is a test, okay? This question is to really test to see where are you mentally when it comes to this position. Are you trying to be here long term? Are you using me as a stepping stone? Where are you mentally? So how not to answer this question is, in 5 years, I plan to start my own firm and really do this on my own. Well, then why would I hire you to basically become my competition? Okay. The way you answer this question is you basically align yourself with the company's goals and you align yourself with the company organization. So example of this would be as a sales representative in the next 5 years, it would be my hope to really get my hands dirty, understand the organization, understand the processes, understand the culture, and to move into a sales management role where I can then lead other people to excel. And then ultimately, hopefully within the 5-year period, is to be a sales director where I can have a regional market and to really have impact at a regional level, right? But you want to be able to show, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Are you motivated? Do you plan to grow in the organization? And so this is really aligned for where do you see yourself with them in 5 years? Okay. Why should I hire you? This question really gets people confused. They get, caught off guard. This question should be the question that you're jumping out of your seat with excitement. Why should I hire you? You should be like, oh my God, let me tell you. All right. This section or this question is a question that allows you to brag about yourself. This is a point of time in the interview where you can feel very confident in telling them why you're the best candidate. That confidence is what's going to really help you sell yourself, right? So you want to talk about your key performances that you've had in the past. You want to talk about your talents and what do you bring to the table. Now, this is what's critical is that you need to understand the job posting. What are they looking for? And then most importantly, have a very clear understanding of who you are and what you can bring to the table. You should never go into the interview not knowing what do you bring to the table. So an exercise for you on your next interview, what I would recommend you doing is writing out 5 to 10 things that you bring to the table for that organization. What do you bring? And I want you to be as confident, as arrogant, as cocky as you can. Put it on a piece of paper and make sure that that is part of your preparation training when it comes to the interview. So when they say, why should I hire you? Think about those 5 things. Put those 5 to 10 things in your portfolio. An example, why you should hire me is that I've worked in the HR career coaching training section for over 10 years. I've worked with over 10,000 veterans and helped them in their transition, providing them insights, knowledge, and career opportunities. Working with you guys is a great fit because I can align my successes with your organization, and I think that we can excel together. Just made that up, but the ideal is talk about my key performances and how that aligns with your organization, okay? Another question, what are your strengths? Can you believe some people actually are challenged with this question? My recommendation, again, an exercise. Write down 10 things you do well. What do you do well? Now, when I say do well, what do you do well in your industry that you're going into? Don't tell me what you do well in general. So if you're going into, let's stay with the sales scenario. Don't tell me your strength is, I like to work with my hands. Has no benefit to me. My strength, if I'm going into the sales industry, is I love working with people. I love being able to help people and have them see my vision and actually utilize what I have to sell, right? What are your strengths? So you need to understand what are those, have those in your portfolio, and have 3 of those prepared for the interview, okay? Now, the hard question, what are your weaknesses? Now, why is this a hard question? Main reason this is hard is because if you say, you know what, my weakness is, I'm a horrible grammar. My grammar sucks. I don't do well with grammar. Well, they may not hire you because I need you to, speak and write in proper grammar, right? So with this question, you have to be very strategic of how you answer it. Now, there's 3 ways, take notes, of how to answer the weakness question. First one is, you give the weakness and how you overcome it. Hey, one of my weaknesses is that grammar. I'm not very good at grammar, but what I've done is I've invested in several books and publications. I've actually downloaded some software that allows me to help with that, and I work diligently. I work aggressively to kind of solve that grammar issue. Now, the problem with that method, in my personal opinion and Higher GI's opinion only, is that depending on what you say, you leave it up to the employer to determine if they're willing to take a risk on your weakness, okay? The second way to answer this is to give me what we call a positive negative, meaning you give a weakness that is positive. So, one of my weaknesses is that I'm a perfectionist, or it's hard for me to let go, or I get sensitive when the team doesn't achieve. In these scenarios, you got to tell me what the positive thing, and then how is it a negative. So, one of my weaknesses is that when the team doesn't excel and when everyone's not completely on board giving their 100%, I get extremely sensitive. And so what I have to do is I have to learn to motivate people the best I can, but at the same time, understand that if they do not excel, it's not a fault of mine. And I have to not be as sensitive and be able to keep moving forward and moving what we need to do for the organization. I'm a perfectionist. When I work on projects, I have to make everything perfect. But the problem with that is sometimes it takes me a little longer to complete the project, especially if we're on timeline. So I have to learn to understand that nothing's perfect, but to give you as close to perfect as possible within the timelines required. Okay, kind of made that up, but hopefully you get the idea. Google some sample questions for this that will also help you and find those and put those in your back pocket. The third one that is, to me, my favorite is to create a weakness that has nothing to do with your job. So let's say you're in sales. You may say, one of my biggest weaknesses is I hate speaking in front of large crowds. If it's over 10 people in a room full of people, I just break down. It's just very difficult for me. But you may be in one-on-one sales or phone sales where that scenario will never happen. Okay. So you use something that has nothing to do with what's required for the job, and you use that as your weakness. Just some insights, okay? Now, let's talk about some helpful pointers. When it comes to interviewing, you want to arrive 15 minutes early. Now, when we say arrive, that means checking in at the security desk or at the receptionist, okay? That doesn't mean pulling into the parking lot like, 15 minutes. No, that means you're checking in before your interview 15 minutes. Now, why that's important is because sometimes interviews run ahead of schedule. That means you're there, prepared, ready to go in case the schedule needs to be adjusted, okay? Also, remember, you're being watched. As soon as you drive onto the campus, you are being watched, okay? Little insight, a little tip, doesn't happen with every organization, but it may happen to you. Be very cautious of the car that you drive. Make sure that it's cleaned inside and out. Sometimes I've seen it where employers will go out, look at your car. If your car is dirty, that tells them that you are not an organized individual. So you might want to be aware of those type things, okay? Dress appropriately, which we'll talk about, dress to the interview. Never bring your phone into the interview. There's no reason to have your phone. It's unprofessional. Sometimes, you'll find yourself, if you're in a waiting room, playing with your phone or reading on your phone. Don't do that. That doesn't show a level of professionalism. Bring your portfolio in, read over your notes, practice your interview questions. Keep your mind in a game time mindset. Don't bring in gum or bite on your nails or cracking. I know those are things of nervousness, but you want to make sure you don't do that. Now, greet people by name. Now, as you go into the establishment and you meet the receptionist or security, know that that's when the interview actually really begins, okay? So you want to have their name. Be very friendly to them. Have the mindset that they are a decision maker. One of the biggest mistakes in interviews is people will give all their attention to who they perceive the decision maker is. And that's not always the case. When I worked in corporate, I would always call down to the receptions and find out their perspective of that person before they interview with me. That told me a lot about that individual. So you want to be very friendly, greet everybody in the hallway, pretend that everybody has a impact in your hiring process. Okay, you never know who they are. You want to shake their hand, which we'll talk about. Give a firm handshake. Sit when asked. Now, accept waters. In a lot of interviews, proper etiquette is, hey, would you like any coffee or water? It's okay to accept that. Okay. Just don't bring in your own water. Don't be like, no, I'm fine. I got this Fuji water, please. I'm good to go. No. You want to have, it's okay to accept it, but do not bring it in yourself, okay? Manage your body language and your voice, which we'll talk about a little later. That shows a lot of who you are and your confidence. Smile. always remember, it's people want to hire people that want to be with the organization. Okay. Now, you may not be a natural smiler, and that's okay, but show energy and excitement that you are there. The one time you should smile, in my opinion, is when you shake the interviewer's hand and you state your name. Hi, I'm Jermaine Higgins. You should be smiling because you're excited to tell them who you are, what you bring to the table, and why you're an asset for them. Okay. So smiles are powerful, right? I always used to tell people, have you ever met someone that smiles but really doesn't talk much and everyone thinks that person is so great? Because the energy and the power of a smile is tremendous. So smile, okay? And then obviously make appropriate eye contact. Now, the interview, talk about the first impression. First impression is everything, right? Let's be honest. We live in America. It's all about perception. It's all about, do we believe this person can do the part? So the way you look, the way you act is going to help do that. So you have to build trust with the employer by your first impression. And I want you to kind of think about that. That's pretty deep, the word trust. You're creating a trust that you are the right person in the right fit. And unfortunately, that has to do with how you look and how you speak, okay? Now, with handshake, that's one of the first things that they're going to look at to see, are you a good fit? With the handshake, a couple keys to understand. Always provide the equal level of pressure in the handshake. So if you're one of those guys that give very firm handshakes and everyone's like, oh my God, you just broke every bone in my hand, you might want to relax it and meet the intensity of the employer. If you're a guy that maybe shakes a female's hand really soft because you're worried about, hurting her, no, meet their intensity. The employer has the power of the greeting of the handshake. So you shake their hand to meet their pressure of the handshake. Your hair, one thing I want you guys to also remember in the interview, if you drew a line, on one side of the line is conservative, the other side of the line is trendy. You need to sit back and think about, in your research for the organization, where does that organization fall? Are they in a trendy industry or are they in a conservative industry? Example, finance. Anything dealing with money is going to be what? Traditional. Fashion or clothes, it's going to be more of the trendy, right? Then within the culture, are they relaxed or are they conservative? So meaning, I worked for Yum Brands. Yum Brands, basically sells fried chicken, fried food, fast food, right? Which is not really a conservative, but not a trendy market. Kind of falls in the middle. But the corporate office was extremely conservative, right? So you need to understand those layers so that you can prepare to look the part, okay? So your hair could be an influence of building that trust. Now, hair color is a factor as well. Now, if you've ever noticed, a trend right now is that a lot of women are putting a lot of different colors in their hair, purples, greens. I'm not sure where that's coming from and why, but hey, who am I? The other thing is maybe you're an older gentleman. Maybe you're in your 40s, late 40s, 50s, and looking for employment. You may dye your hair to a solid black to create or eliminate the age discrimination. Just some things to think about, okay? Piercings, no nose piercings, regardless of the position, okay? Tongue piercings, those type of things. Ladies, with your earrings, you may just provide one earring, depending on the culture, whether it's loop or studs, right? Men, no earrings in a conservative market. Another thing to be aware about, ladies and men, going into the interview with sunglasses on, not a good look, okay? So make sure you leave your sunglasses in the car. Tattoos. Yes, I said it. Tattoos, my veterans. Some of you guys probably have tattoos all over. Now, based off the industry that you're going into, tattoos may be acceptable. Personal recommendation, if you're going into a more conservative, you may want to cover those tattoos so that you don't create a certain level of stereotype, okay? Non-traditional clothes, I would say, again, based off the industry, you may be a little more cautious of how you do that. Baggy clothes or, a loose tie, rolled up pants, a backpack in there with you. That's all based on the job. Now, one of the things when it comes to attire and the way you look, just remember, always dress one level above the day-to-day attire. So that means if they wear slacks and a polo shirt every day, then you need to be in a suit. If they're working with their hands and they're wearing overalls, then you probably need to wear khakis and a polo, okay? Be aware of those components. Your beard, it is okay as long as it's neat. I would say also look at the culture. A lot of conservative industries don't like beards, but more of the middle and trendy is completely okay. Body odor. You may say, duh, make sure I'm clean every day. But what we mean by body odor is your cologne and perfumes, okay? Now, my recommendation is do not wear cologne, do not wear perfume. Several reasons. You can guess. One, the employer could be sensitive to smell. You may think that you just put 2 sprays on and they're like, oh my God, did you smell that guy? Like took a bath. And then now all they can think about is you and the way you smell and how they have a headache because of that smell, okay? The second reason is that perfumes and colognes are nostalgic. Meaning, have you ever walked past somebody and their cologne or perfume reminds you of somebody else? The problem with that is if it's a negative reminder, that could affect you. No, we shouldn't. I don't know about this guy. Just something about him reminds me of something not too good. So, stay away from colognes or perfumes. First impression is by your body language. That will determine how you look. Are you shy? Are you confident? Are you arrogant? Will help mark that. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, having your arms crossed, having your hands in your pocket, smiling, hand on your chin, like you're thinking or that you're telling a story, telling a lie, excuse me. So you want to make sure your posture communicates, a better, accurate, or a positive body language. This is not the clearest slide, but, if you're on the defense, maybe they're like, well, why didn't you get promoted if you were in that position? You're looking at them like, no, you didn't. You got to stay positive, smile, show that you're not affected. Sometimes those things could be tests. You don't want to show that you're arrogant. You may be like, hey, I just spent 27 years in the Marine Corps. I could do anything. Get it, got it. Show that you're a team player, though, okay? You may be annoyed, you may be confused. Like, you talking about microchips? I don't know nothing about no microchips. Show a level of consistency, your poker face, that you're happy to be there, okay? During the interview, your body language, like we said, firm handshake, wait to sit down when offered. You want to sit up straight and alert like you're interested. Now, I would say this is a lot harder for men because as men, we don't have good body posture. So in your chair, you sit up straight. It allows you to project your voice. It shows a level of confidence. And that's probably the best body language that you can do. You might want to have your hands on your knees or on your portfolio. If you talk with your hands, keep your elbows in and talk, right? Allow your wrist to rotate versus your elbows sticking out. Look at the interviewer in the eye. The interviewer doesn't have to look at you in the eye, but you want to look at them in the eye that you're focused, okay? Be careful of folding your legs and your arms, and, don't fiddle. which is a level of nervousness. Okay. So dressing for the interview, like we said, will determine if you're a good fit. Again, I said dress one level above the day-to-day attire. When you think about the attire, if you're wearing suits, it's all about, being pressed, having, the tie at the belly button if you're wearing a suit, your hair groomed, polished shoes. Ladies and men, please, I can't stress enough. That is a test, looking at your shoes. Your shoes need to be polished just as much as the suit, okay? That shows that you are attention to detail, that you're someone that takes care of things around you. So your shoes. Ladies, if your heels look like an alligator just bit them, you need to make sure that you wear good quality shoes that are a good fit for you, okay? Ladies, when we talk about if you decide to wear a business suit with a skirt, it needs to go down to your knees, no exception, okay? Above your knees is unacceptable. Too low below your knees is also could backfire as well and create a stuffy, maybe what's the word I'm looking for? Like you may not fit in being too low below the knees. Okay, so at the knees is the proper etiquette. Midriffs and back covered, right? So you don't want to have your back out or your stomach showing. Men and ladies, undergarments, unacceptable. Like you're going into a job interview. No, you may wear this off the clock, but on the clock, please do not have this happen. You're like, duh, but trust me, it does happen. Cleavage, conceal that. Men, you may think that you're too sexy for school, but you need to button your shirt up appropriately in a business setting. Ladies, what I want you to understand with a business suit, it's not a business suit unless it has a jacket. Okay. Now you notice that the lady in this paragraph, she has a jacket, but she's also showing all her knees. So you want to have that covered up to your neck with a blouse that is appropriate for an interview. Okay. If you would wear it to a night event, a club or something like that, it's probably not the best attire. Okay. So let's talk about some guidelines during the interview. Don't lie in the interview, right? Always tell the truth, even though it's maybe hard to really be truthful about it. Your answers should be sincere and to the point, okay? How long should your answers be? How long do you have to answer a question? That answer is 2 minutes, which is a long time. When you're lying, sometimes you'll ramble and go on and on and on trying to find an answer for that. You should always tell the truth. Now, in an interview, regardless of the question, do not answer the question with a yes or a no. So they may say, are you comfortable when we're working weekends? We advise you to not answer with the yes or no. No, I'm not. You want to explain a little bit behind it, right? So are you comfortable working on weekends? No, I'm not comfortable working on weekends, as weekends is I utilize for my family time. And I found that having a work-life balance is very important for me, and it allows me to excel when I work during the week. Okay. You want to do some type of explanation real short behind that, regardless of the question. All right. Don't lose your temper, control your emotions. There's times in the interview where they may be creating a level of stress. They may be trying to test your personality. So hold your composure in that interview. That's funny. Speak as clearly as possible. All right, so that they understand. If you have an accent, you may slow it down. If you have braces or something that holds you back from maybe speaking as clear, you may address that in the beginning of the interview to make sure that you provide as clear as possible. Never badmouth or complain about a previous employer. Now, guys and ladies, this is important. If you badmouth your past employer, then you're telling the employer that you would badmouth them. Don't ever, 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 ever badmouth an employer. So they may say questions like, tell me about your last employer. What did you like and dislike about them? You can't say things like, I was with the US Navy. I hated them because, they try to confine me, or whatever that reason is, or whatever your heart feels like. You need to make sure you have professional answers to that are positive in those questions. Okay? Do not complain. Do not assume that the interview has read your resume in detail. Guys and ladies, the worst thing to say in an interview is, if you read my resume, you will see, well, maybe they didn't read your resume, or they wouldn't ask you the question if they read your resume. Okay? Do not create the arrogance or the phrase of assumption that they've read your resume. Can you imagine, like, let's say you're in sales. Again, you're a sales manager. You have pressures of meeting sales objectives, but at the same time, you got to hire people. You may not look at the resume until right before the interview. Okay? Don't make the assumption that they've read it. Avoid sensitive issues, topics like politics or religion, unless it relates to the job. And, sound enthusiastic about the position, regardless if you want it or not. There may be times where the job is like, nah, I can't do this. You want to sound enthusiastic as if it's an opportunity. You never know what the company is thinking, who they know, what other opportunities may be out there. So stay positive, regardless of what they provide you. All right. And make sure you have a few questions about the job and the company ready. In the interview with the questions, you want to provide what we call broad questions and narrow questions. Broad questions are, tell me about the culture. Tell me about who was in this position before me and why did they leave. Tell me, what is the day-to-day task you're really looking for? You may ask strategic questions like, let's say your direct report is interviewing. You may say, what are your biggest issues and how can I help you solve those? I noticed that you guys use a Salesforce as the CRM to make sales calls. How does Salesforce really affect the close ratio compared to using Zoho? I'm making up something. But it's basically showing a question that you've done some research about that organization and shows that you have invested time in knowing something. With answering questions, you may ask the question, tell me, is there anything I've done or said today that may hinder you from hiring me today? So that you're getting some type of feedback about your performance, especially if it's a job you really don't care if you get. Now, when we talk about salary, guys, you never discuss salary until a job offer is given. Let me repeat. You never discuss salary unless a job offer is given. So sometimes the employer will say, so Jermaine, that is not where you need to negotiate. You need to go and find a way to defer that question. I'm trying odd, exciting career. I bring a lot to the table. I think whatever's fair for someone in my skill sets that I bring to the table. Or you may defer them with, what do you think? Someone of my skill set position. Tons of answers that you can provide. If you're forced into giving a number, then provide a salary range based off your research, okay? But do not start negotiating salary in the interview. That is sometimes a filtering process because I may find two candidates are very similar and salary may be the filtering platform. During the interview, you might want to thank the interview for the opportunity. One of the things you must ask is, when do you plan to make? That's going to help you with your timeline, following up if you haven't heard anything. You want to send a thank you letter, so it's important for you to get their business card. It's important for you to write down some things that you guys had in common or spoke about. So let's say before small talk, you talked about the NBA playoffs, or you talked about, the Super Bowl or whatever, or you see that they're Steeler fans. You might be like, "You're a Steeler fan? Oh man," and you kind of to some type of funny conversation about it. Your thank you card needs to be short, sweet, thanking them for the opportunity, but also bringing up some of those common discussions. So you may sign off with, best of the still 2019, something like hygiene. Okay? Now, if you really, really, really want the job, I would tell you to go and get hard copy thank you cards, bring them with you to the interview, put them in your car, and now that you have the business card, after the interview, you go out to your car, write in at, thank you so much for the opportunity. I learned a lot about the organization. I feel like I can be an amazing fit. Hope to hear from you soon. No Steelers, but go Kansas City. LOL. Close it up, put it in, go back inside to that lady that you made friends with that works at receptionist, and give her the thank you cards to enter office it. The hard copies are brilliant because now you're in their office and they have to think about you in their office. Okay, but that's if you really want the job. But then you still go home and write the email thanking them for the opportunity. Okay, so thank them for the interview. Now, you got the job. If you get it, hooray. Some things to think about. Reply to the offer letter that you accept or decline. Be polite if you turn it down. This is where you want to negotiate. You only negotiate the issues that are bothering you. You don't negotiate every topic. So if it's about salary, you negotiate the salary. If they're not able to give you the salary you're looking for, you may compensate salary. I negotiate a higher vacation, or when I say higher, more weeks in the vacation, or you may negotiate stock options or something like that. Okay. If you don't get the job, it's not a bad thing. You just may not be a good fit, in which at the end of the day, if you're not a good fit, it saves you a lot of stress on the back end, right? Going into an organization. So, for example, some of you guys are in the military now, and I bet you could probably think about a handful of people in your career in the military that were not a good fit for the military. They just simply didn't gel with the culture of the service you were in. Well, the same way happens for, jobs, right? You want to make sure that you're a good fit so that you can excel in that culture. If you don't get the job, again, be polite. You never know. And gracious, they may call you back. Learn what you can take from it. Find out what you could do better and try to address those issues, and even ask the employer for that feedback. Failure is not falling down, but refusing to get up. So make sure you get up and keep it moving. Okay, guys? These are some basic, simple tips of interviewing. We didn't go very deep into it, but hopefully it provided some value to you. If you have any questions or want to schedule some time to speak to one of our coaches, and thank you guys for listening, and we hope to see you at our events.